How you doing this week, Andrew?
Doing well.
Yeah, you doing good?
Yeah. I'm loving this.
You ready for this?
Yeah.
All right, you look nice and cozy.
Oh, it's nice.
All right. Question for all of y'all, because if we've asked ourselves this, you probably have. Have you ever asked yourself, perhaps in a moment of frustration, what the heck you're doing with your life?
Every single day.
Yeah, me too. I can relate with that. Or gotten sick and tired of doing the same thing over and over again without apparently getting anywhere. Perhaps you find yourself jumping from one endeavor to another, flavor of the week style. Well, how can you break the cycle? How can you finally start living a more fulfilling life and set your kids on a path to do the same?
Yeah. This is excellent questions. Starts off on an excellent topic, one that's been near and dear to my heart. So
Yeah.
because
Come
I've been in that cycle way too many times in the last 10 years.
on.
So
Yeah. And we're going to try to answer that. And I mean, I think our premise is that the answer is in finding your life's purpose. And I mean, that's kind of a loaded answer because we're probably going to be spending our entire life figuring out what that is. But yeah, we're going to dig into what is purpose and why does it have the power to turn our lives from the hamster wheel grind to one that is meaningful and fulfilling. How can we find our purpose and help our kids to do the same?
right.
So, grab a drink or don't. Keep your hands on the steering wheel if you're driving. And join us as we dig into each of these questions.
Let's go.
All right. This episode is brought to you by Technical Difficulties with Paul. All right. So first and foremost, Andrew, what comes to your mind when you hear the word purpose? What does that word mean to you? What is purpose?
I think best way for me to start this off is just kind of drawing a picture. And so you remember all those hikes we did in high school, especially like Mount Lafayette?
How could I forget? Well, I don't remember Mount Lafayette individually, but I remember the hikes in general.
Yeah. So you remember standing in the parking lot before embarking on our hike,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see the peak. To me, that's purpose.
Okay.
You don't know how you're going to get there quite yet or what the trail's going to be like, but you at least know where you're going. It's not like you just drive out to a random spot and be like, let's see what happens. A couple times, more than I care to actually admit, I just jumped in the car, started driving, found myself in Chicago, and was like, oh, I should probably go home now.
Has it ever actually happened to you where you end up in Chicago?
Really? Because I was just bored that day, so I just got in the car, started driving, and I was in Chicago. It sounds late. But yeah, to me, purpose is that overarching goal, that where you want to get to.
Mm-hmm.
It helps you define and draw out the roadmap to get there, but it's really your destination. Where are you? Where are you going? Where's this life headed?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you don't have that purpose, that goal, that mountain to climb, what are you doing with your life?
Yeah, you're going to end up wandering aimlessly and require a search and rescue team to come and fish you out, or maybe you'll have to cut your arm off to get out from under the boulder. How much farther should we keep taking this analogy?
I know. I can call your brother-in-law.
Yeah. I like this though, Andrew. Yeah, having somewhere to go and a defining direction. The I see. Sorry, dog has come to say hi. I don't know if the microphone picked that up, but I'm glad I introduced Sadie because otherwise people would be like, what the fuck was that noise? What's that, Sadie? What is that? Do you want to hear?
Well, while you're getting her situated, we're probably going to have a lot of the smaller purposes that we're trying to achieve. You remember on the hikes, especially on Lafayette. Oh, we got to get to the overnight hut because they have water and we can take a rest there and have a snack. But then still have another 1.5 miles up a steep trail to get to the peak.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just kind of setting goals
Mm-hmm.
to reach your ultimate goal.
Yeah.
So defining purpose overall encompasses all of that.
Yeah.
The small goals to reach the big goal.
Yeah. And that brings up an interesting point because if you have goals without purpose, basically mid-level goals, then you're going to you run the risk of losing interest,
Right.
or there being conflicting priorities of your goals, and you're like, I don't know what to do here because you don't have a defining direction. You don't have something that unifies everything you're doing. And we're getting a little bit into, okay, well, why do we care about purpose and all of that? But yeah, you can't, it's hard to, I mean, it's all well and good to have a defining direction, but if you don't have a way to get there, then it's meaningless.
I think you put it well in the conversation we had just earlier. It's the ultimate reason why. You were saying it's when you can't ask that question why anymore. So take our podcast, for example. Why are we doing the podcast? To help us become better men.
Yeah.
Why do we want to be better men? To help other men try to figure this out, help our children. Okay, why do we want to do that? And it's to be the best fathers possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there something beyond that? I think, unless you live it back to just being the best man possible, but in fatherhood, that's kind of one and the same: best man, best father possible. So,
yeah, and it kind of brings up a chicken and the egg sort of thing, or a horse and cart sort of thing between purpose and happiness.
yeah,
Because is one's purpose to be happy, to find true happiness, or does one achieve true happiness because they have found their purpose and are applying themselves to that? Or is it a symbiotic thing? Now we're getting really philosophical, but that's the premise of the show, is we're going to get philosophical. So.
I could see. I mean, yeah. Ask yourself. You have to ask yourself, why is okay. Do you go to the next step? Why do I want to be that? Why do I want to be the best man, the best father, best husband possible? Because I want to be happy. Does lead to that? I think once you get to that point, it kind of. Gosh. Oh, it does bring a kind of symbiotic. Paul's dying, folk. Perks of having 2 dogs.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, this feels so bad. I gas mask. Oh my goodness. Please proceed.
But yeah, if you're not doing things to bring happiness into your life, what? Then why?
Yeah. And we can talk more another time about what is true happiness. And you know, we were talking earlier about Aristotle's perception of that and levels of good. But we can dig into that another time. But yeah, I mean, I think they're definitely intertwined, our purpose and our happiness. And who doesn't want to be happy? Who doesn't want to be fulfilled? And our purpose is going to help us achieve that. Do you think our purpose is, each individual's purpose is a predefined thing, or do you think it's kind of like a choose your own adventure thing?
Great question. As humans, we have free will. So to me, it's all a choose your own adventure. It's like a path of self-discovery to see what brings you that happiness. And like you said, we'll get into the different degrees of happiness in another conversation. But yeah, to me, it's I think you put it well. Choose your own adventure story to get there.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point of like us having free will. I was listening to a book recently that talked about how our ability to choose and to have a sense of control is innate to our humanity. And I mean, you can even bring it back to caveman days. It's like having a sense of control of your environment, knowing, okay, between this river and that cliff, I know we're safe. Every danger is accounted for. You're in control. You can survive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost just goes back to that survival, but it so it's innate to us, and a lot of some like depression and anxiety, and this is a very unprofessional interpretation of this, but from what I understand of it is it's related to control or lack thereof, not feeling like you have control, and or having that ability to choose. So I think it makes sense that you can define your own purpose and choose it, because that will then fulfill that element of control that we need as humans, of agency. But then there will be elements of like what is most suited for you as an individual, because you have your strengths, your talents, your skills, and your interests, which are all kind of intertwined, and help define what that is for you, which is kind of a good stepping point into like or like foreboding of what we'll talk about later this episode. Is okay, how do we define what our purpose is, which is based on all of. But yeah, I mean, it's a very big, like impactful topic, like purpose, but it's pretty simply defined.
Yeah. It's just simple to define, lifetime to achieve.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything more to say about what purpose is? I mean, I think that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah.
It's that peak, that mountain peak that we're hiking up to. So who gives to find H? So what? Like, why do we care about our purpose? We kind of alluded to that.
Oh, I mean, like we said, it gives us that direction, that sense of direction of where our life is going. We've decided where we want to drive our life based on we've discerned is going to bring us that ultimate fulfillment, that happiness. We talked about it keeps us from just going willy-nilly all over so that way when you're not ending up in Chicago just because you got in the car and just started driving. It keeps us on track to align, like it's just gonna come back to the happiness part. Like keeps us on track, keeps us aligned, keeps us oriented towards our happiness. Yeah, you said, like you're going to come to a lot of forks in the road. You have to figure out if those forks still lead to that goal, and there's going to be a lot of different paths that you can choose. But as long as you figure out that those roads lead to there, like you're on that adventure of life. Like it's where you want to go. It's just getting there. It's, where you're figuring it out.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And it gives us a reason, very literally, to get through the hardship. And it gives us clarity, kind of like rewording what you're saying, a sense of clarity which makes our life simpler too, because when we get to that fork in the road, we don't have to spend a lot of mental energy and deliberating to say, okay, do I go left or do I go right? Do I go right? Do I take this job offer or do I not? Do I put my kid in public school or private school? Do I, we go back to our purpose, which also helps then gives our life principle. And we're like, oh, this is my one focus. This is what I'm going towards. So this is the best move forward here. And it gives us that clarity, control.
It gives you the ability to rationalize through certain decisions and not taking into account all your emotions and aligning both your reason, your will, and the rest of your humanity towards where you gotta go. Because those forks in the roads might actually be a split between emotional and emotions and rationality. And so you have to figure out how to bring those back together as a complete human being to reach what was good.
Yeah, I like where this is going. Another thought that comes to mind is it helps us stay consistent throughout life. Like something that I've especially struggled with over the years, more so in earlier years, and I'm sure a lot of us have, is hopping from, we already kind of alluded to it, like the flavor of the week is like, I'm going to pick up this hobby, or I'm going to like retire in 10 years, or I'm going to like get a beach bod, whatever the case may be. But this is all focusing on like those mid-tier goals or just goals in general, which aren't necessarily, I mean, they could be ends in themselves, depending on the individual and their values and what's important to them. But for me, it wasn't that. And then I would be focusing on getting swole. And then I would realize like, I don't know how to talk with other people, and look at that person, he talks so eloquently. So then I would switch over to that. I was trying to do everything all at once, which is part of the process. I think it's part of learning like what you value.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can't be 100% at everything. So once I've defined my purpose, which at the most basic level is being the best husband and father that I can be. That gives direction to everything. I want to be fit, not because I want to have this Grecian body that I can show off at the beach. I wouldn't mind that either. But so that way I can have higher levels of energy, so that my mental acuity can be on point, so that I have the resources physically to be there for my wife and for my kids. And when I'm 80, I can be trucking up this mountain, still get into that mountain peak with my grandkids on my back. And I want to be financially sound, our family to be financially sound, so that way we can spend time as a family. We have leisure time as a family. We can create experiences. Is family, is money essential for that? No, but it sure makes that stuff easier.
Right.
And it gives direction, it gives proper weight to each of those things. And when it comes time to, okay, my goal is to be fit, like, I mean, this week, for example, Eddie was sick.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is a pretty basic example, but it illustrates the point that there will be times where we have conflicting priorities. And there was one of taking care of Eddie, who was sick, and the other of getting like my daily routines in. And like that's a pretty stark example. Obviously, I'm going to take care of Eddie.
Right.
But ultimately, if we pull that thread, it's because I want to be the best husband and father. And being the best father is taking care of her and making sure she has what she needs to be loved and cared for and supported. And so, of course, some of those other things are going to play second fiddle. But at the same time, it's not like that goal goes out the window. Okay, if she's sleeping, I'm going to go for a quick walk.
Yeah.
Or I'll do it after she goes to bed or whatever. Like, so it helps provide that consistency and it helps provide that direction, and it makes making decisions easier.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Those are all really good points. Believe it or not, a lot of those same scenarios and questions come up in the TV show Bluey.
Little Bluey.
I watch it with my nieces and my nephews, and you just see, especially the father figure. This is something interesting that I noticed. Like the first season was like really like focused on the father and his relationship with his daughters. And just like all the questions they ask him and how he's trying to be a better dad to them and whatnot. And you can really see he's already figured out that sense of purpose as being the best dad to his girls as he possibly can. The offering, I think in one episode, a later season, like he realizes he's out of shape and he wants to get in shape just so he can keep up with the girls. Because he wants to, it's all leading to him being the best dad possible. To Bluey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, that resonates so much because, I mean, it came up in our first episode, the intro episode, but one of the reasons why, for me, that I'm doing this podcast is because after we lost Isla, like, I didn't have the energy or the know-how or the resources to be there for Sarah the way that she needed and deserved, to be there for Evie the way that she needed there and deserved. It would be at the end of the day, Evie would come home from daycare and she would just want quality time with us, her parents, and she would have so much energy and she would want to run around, and I'd just be exhausted. I'd just be tired. And it's like, either I can like put her in front of the TV and chill and like do what's easy, or like I can dig deeper, and a lot of that came like it forced me to like define what my purpose is, or revisit what my purpose is and align everything. But yeah, I can I reconcile with what Bandit, is that
Bandit, yeah.
Is that his name?
Yeah.
Louis said with his desire to get fit for his kids, because I mean, for those of you, I assume a lot of our audience are parents, and even aunts and uncles know that like keeping up with kids, especially young kids, is it takes energy. It takes effort. If we could bottle up their energy, we would be rich.
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of like me getting into wanting to do this podcast with you as well. It's like I have 5 nieces and nephews that are living with me. And so they get home from school and they're crazy, they're energetic, running around. And so really it was just like, how can I be a better example? How can I be a better uncle to these 5 kids, and then how can I take that and what we discuss about to really build up my skill set of being a father. So I already have a prominent place in these kids' lives.
Okay.
I'm already starting to define what I am going to be like as a parent.
Yeah. Yeah, tell me more about that, Andrew, because so you're already starting to think about being a father, and you're obviously an uncle, and you give a lot of weight to that. How does that all tie into your life's purpose? And yeah, I mean, I can make it a multifaceted question, but we'll leave it at that.
Great question, and something I'm still figuring out. But you and I share this common value very, very much, and it's just like the importance of family. And I'm not from a big family, but you are. My mom's from a big family, so I was very close with like her side of the family. It's just like seeing how strong like all these families that I've been around are.
Mm-hmm.
Take into consideration like the closeness all you and your siblings have, and they're supporting and building them each other, and are there for each other, even though living all over the country. So it's just kind of like building up like that part right now as an uncle, showing up basically,
Mm-hmm.
and giving it my all. Because I know when I have my own family, like there's gonna be days, and I'm sure you've experienced this, like so it's hard. Like it demands what you think maybe too much. It's something you signed up for,
Mm-hmm.
and so you're able to take that on climbing up this mountain peak and take that purpose of trying to get there, and really just like this is just gonna be one of the steep days, the steep incline climb, and you're able to just break it down to like one day at a time when it gets hard. If I can get through today, I can get through any day.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm not feeling it and I'm still trying to achieve my goals, and that'll come up in another episode when we talk about grit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's for me, it's just the ability. It's I'm still figuring it out. It's a big still mystery discernment process, the rationalization process, but it's really allowing me to figure out, okay, what do I do and what not want to do as a father to my own kids, but by how am I a part of these 5 kids' lives?
Yeah. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. And yeah, you brought up the point of grit and getting up that steep slope, and our purpose giving us a reason to get up that slope. And that makes me think of Viktor Frankl. And I mean, he wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning.
Yes.
Which is very much tied into this topic. And you talk about change tough times, what Viktor Frankl, among his fellow Holocaust survivors, what they went through, it's just like mind-boggling, and the fact that they survived it and they didn't give up. And Viktor Frankl especially is a poignant example because he found meaning in the suffering itself.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of having his life uprooted along with everybody else's and getting thrown into the concentration camp, he had his life's work, which was a manuscript actually about like finding meaning in life and whatever, taken away from him. So years and years of research and thinking and writing it down and confiscated, taken away. And on top of that, he lost his wife, Tilly, and I think he lost his children as well. Everything ripped away.
Yeah.
everything. He's not the sole example of this, but one of many. But what did he choose to do? He chose to define his purpose and work towards that each and every day. And that was, he was going to finish his life's work, even though that meant starting from the beginning, even though that meant surviving every single day in the concentration camp, of just being debased by the circumstances and the guards, and having to clean up after the murders day in and day out. And he did that in a number of ways. Part of it was visualizing himself in a lecture hall, teaching his students. He visualized himself talking, having conversations with his wife, Tilly. But how did he get through it? He got through it because he identified his purpose. And that purpose, and I think this is what gives a lot of weight, and you mentioned grit. It comes up in Angela Duckworth's book, Grit, that the most impactful purposes are those that are other-centered, like those that are the ones that have the most power. And he wanted to complete his life's work, not for his own sake, so that he knew what meaning was, but so that he could share that with others, and they could benefit from it and live more fulfilling lives and get closer to that. So, I mean, that's just a very poignant example of how impactful identifying your purpose can be.
Right.
Because if it can help him get through all of that loss and suffering and then come out on the other end, frankly, better and stronger, obviously, like, not saying it's better to like lose your family and all that stuff, right? So take that with a grain of salt. But as an individual, then we can get through our life and the hardships that it sends our way.
Yeah. Well, let's take that and apply it to father. Like, I remember as a kid, things were always seemed like peach keen. Dad had control over the situation, and looking back 20 years, you realize now that we've grown up, like, everything was not okay. Like, there was some absolutely tough times, and you take the example of my own dad. He was this rock, and every day, just carrying us, my parents, especially carrying us, our family through these more difficult times. Well, that leaves a lasting impression upon myself, and I'm sure some of you have gone through that and kind of reflected on that. Realized I've learned a lot from that example. It's not easy, but why did my dad do it? Was so that way we could have and learn our own meaning and purpose, and learn how to stick through those hard times. So just drawing that parallel from Viktor Frankl and Angela Duckworth to our own fathers, like, they did all of that for us. And so it's up to us now to take that, build up even more through our purpose, and then share that, like, our happiness and our purpose with our own children, with our nieces and nephews, and drive them to achieve great things as well.
Yeah, and that brings up an interesting point for me, because how does one unify all of our desires into one focus? Because there's the purpose or like the desire to protect our children and set them up for success and to love them and help them find theirs. And then we also have like desire and drive to be, or many of us do, to be like professionally successful, whatever that looks like, or creatively successful. And sometimes those can conflict, for lack of better words. Let's say, I mean, for example, you get offered a job across the country, right? And your kids are living a very happy and stable life in your current home, and your spouse has a steady job, and okay, like professionally, all side, you might take that job offer. And but then you also have the priority of your kids and your family. I was like, is that really the best decision? So
You answer.
well, yes, yeah, and I think the answer is self-evident, but the point I'm getting at is you have to know your purpose, and you have to think about all the elements that lead into your purpose, and define them and refine them and keep coming back to them, so that way your priorities are clear.
Right. Well, no, that right there, you just answered it. You have to define your priorities. Once you become married or you start a family, your priorities are going to take a shift. Purpose is going to become much more clear because now you're not like, yes, it's still what brings me happiness, but now you've made those choices of, I've brought a family into the world. And so my happiness has to be geared towards, you have to align that, understand how that plays into the priority of not your family instead of you as an individual.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point, and it kind of highlights what you already said. I mean, you're already kind of a leg up on that I was at before I married Sarah or had Evie or her, and that's like thinking about this stuff, thinking ahead to how would you align those priorities and whatnot. But like, it just highlights the point that identifying our purpose, our life's purpose, is a lifelong endeavor. That doesn't mean don't do it,
Right?
Even if it just means like saying the simplest one sentence, saying my purpose is to be a chef. Like, let's just say that. And then as you go through life, you take the different circumstances and interests and priorities, and you're like, okay, well, maybe my purpose is to create memories for families as they sit down at my table,
Right.
and enjoy a meal together, or whatever it is. But our life, case in point, single man considering getting married and having a family, like, is made of chapters. And as you go through those chapters of lives, like, your purpose is naturally going to evolve. But I think the key is defining it and continuing to refine it.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is kind of like starting to get more into the next section. So maybe this is a good segue of, okay, so how do we do that? How do we define our purpose? How do we do it for ourselves? How do we set our kids up? Because, like, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing when I was a kid. It's like, and people would ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, my answer for a large part of it, I want to be a priest. Obviously that didn't happen. And so how do we set our kids up for success and help them build the foundation so that they can identify and refine the purpose throughout life? So we'll dig into that, but first, let's tackle my favorite segment of our episodes, and that's dad jokes. All right, I'll start us off. Here's a Why Dad themed or sponsored dad joke. Why Dad the chicken crossed the road?
Oh God. Why?
To find his purpose.
Why do melons have weddings?
Why?
Because the cantaloupe.
Oh, nice. Did you hear about the circus fire? It was intense.
Went to the aquariums this weekend with the nieces and nephews.
Oh, yeah?
We didn't stay long because there's something fishy about that place. Oh yeah.
I told my wife she should embrace her mistakes. She gave me a hug.
Just kidding. How is my wallet like an onion?
When you open it up, it makes you cry.
Yeah. Nice. Sorry, I stole that from you.
What did the big flower say to the little flower?
What?
Hi, bud.
Oh. Why did the old man fall down a well?
Why?
Because he couldn't see that well.
Oh. Okay, here's a nice winter themed one. What do you call a snowman with a six-pack?
What?
An abdominal snowman.
Oh, God. Well, since we're in your basement, whenever I'm over, I always stand in the corner when it's cold.
Okay.
Because it's always 90 degrees there.
All right.
Well, that was just that dumb. Yeah. Like, last one for me. I found a book called How to Solve 50% of Your Problems. So I bought two.
Classic. All right. So now what? So far we've talked about a little bit about what purpose is, why it matters, why we care.
Yeah.
So how do we apply this? How do we apply this for ourselves? How do we find what our purpose is? How do we help our kids do the same? Yeah, so if you guys know, let us know because we're wondering. Till next time.
Bye. No, this is the $1 million question. In the end, are we going to talk a little bit about this in the next episode? But just the importance of this starts with self-reflection. It is one of our episodes coming up, right?
Who knows? I don't know. I forget. But anyway, regardless, it's important. Talk about it. Say more. Reflection.
If it's not, it's going to be, probably, most likely. No, just the importance, like, you can't define anything unless you're going to reflect on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And all these subpoints that we're going to talk about in just a second all roll up into reflection. If you're not taking time out of your day or your week, you're never going to be able to define your purpose and lay out the roadmap to get there.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have some me time to figure that out.
Right. You can't learn what a book says unless you read it.
Exactly.
Right? It's like you can't figure this shit out unless you think about it.
Right. So, like, I personally, like, this is maybe what I do is I have like little checkups during the day when I wake up, lunch break, before going to bed, and on the way to work, I set the tone. Okay, here's what I want to accomplish today, or like what virtues or habits I want to build on. Lunch, it's just kind of like how'd the morning go, where to fall, how do I get back on track. And then in the evening, it's how did the whole day go, what is tomorrow's purpose going to be. And yeah, that's a lot of times. Takes me 5 minutes each time though. But like defining your overall purpose, like maybe you need like an afternoon of just silent reflection, reading, like turn off the TV, make sure there's no important football games or sports games going on that you're gonna miss. Especially now that we're getting close to Super Bowl weekend, but just to turn off the noise and distractions. If you've got kids, it's going to be a little bit harder to do, but it's still possible. If they're little kids, when they go down for their nap, or maybe it's right when they go to bed, instead of vegging out and watching TV, you take 30, 40 minutes to start writing out and asking yourselves these questions. What is my purpose?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you can also use times available to you. Like if you commute to work, like turn off the music, turn off the podcast, don't open that book, whatever. And just, I mean, it doesn't have to be every time but just take some time to allow yourself to be there in quiet and peace and think about it. Or it could be a walk.
Mm-hmm. I personally
Fishing,
suggest
whatever.
something where you can journal it down. The reason being, like psychologically, when we write something down, there's a part of us that's now committed to that.
Mhm.
And so it's grand to like have, if you just keep things in your head, they're only going to stay there. It's a lot harder to make them, turn them into a reality.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, like if you're using a commute because let's say you can't find time otherwise, and you're driving, you're not on a bus or something, like you can think about it over the commute, and then when you get to your office,
yeah,
write it down, jot it down, take 5 minutes to write it down, or audio notes.
exactly. It's just, reflection is the first and foremost important step in finding your purpose. Like, understand who you are, and then figure out what that goal is.
Yeah. Yeah, I've found reflection to be so incredibly helpful for me in my own life because it helps me refocus. And you talked about getting back on track. And that's what life is. It's getting back on track over and over again. Because no matter how hard you try, no matter how well defined your purpose is, you're going to get off track. I mean, Abby got sick this week, and that threw me off track because I was out of my routine. But just got to bounce back. You got to get back to it. And reflection helps you do that because you remind yourself of what's important to you. The psychologist, Stephanie Carlson, talks about reflection and how it invokes and supports agency,
Right.
and therefore autonomy, which is, we talked about like free will, and it helps you make your life yours, which is another reason why purpose matters, because you're not living somebody else's life. You're not living a life of what you should be doing.
Right.
You're living your life. You're living the life that you define, that you set out on. And I mean, for me, that's incredibly empowering, but you can't do that without reflection. And for each of these things, it's like, okay, well, how do we pass that on to our kids as well?
Right.
And reflection is a tough one, I think, for kids. Because one, how are you going to get a kid to sit down quietly for anything longer than a couple of seconds? You're not, or you would be hard pressed to, I think. But I think a good way to foster reflection is to foster a reflective mindset, which is to ask the right questions.
Yes.
So my vision for our family is to foster that in Evie and her little brother, soon to arrive, by one, when they ask questions, don't tell them just because.
Right.
And maybe not even just give them a flat out answer. And am I going to do this every single time? Probably not. I definitely don't. But it's something I'll strive to do. And because what happens when I'm telling them, I don't know, or tell them, why is the sky blue? Because little fairies painted it that way.
Right.
I'm telling them it's not important. You shouldn't ask these questions. I don't care enough about it, so you don't care enough. Why should you care enough about it? No, it's like, what I aspire to do is to be like, first, why do you think so? Instead of just giving them the easy answer,
Exactly.
start asking, get their gears turning. And maybe instead of like giving them the straight answer, be like, oh, maybe it could be this, maybe it could be that. And okay, well, sky is blue because of the light, the way that the light comes from the sun. And obviously, depending on how old they are, you can dumb it down or science it up, but like talking about like the different waves. And I find myself stumbling here, so this would be a moment. It's like, well, let's pull up a quick YouTube video or something. Or if we're not in a position to do that, like say, I don't have an answer to that, but I want to get it to you. So let's circle back to it and be sure to do so.
That, or I don't know, let's figure this out together, because that's a good question.
Doing it together, I think, would be huge.
Yeah, everything you said, like, I've been trying to practice more and more with my nieces and nephews, especially like the younger boys, because they're in first grade and preschool. So they're starting to build that, like, their curiosity is going, and so they're starting to build that rational mindset. And so just encouraging that. One of my nephews will come up and ask me questions like, well, what about like this or that? And it's like, well, that's a good question. Like, tell me what you think first. And then we'll walk through this. And just being very Socratic about it. And you sometimes get to a point where it's like, now they're in a circular argument because it's like, well, why do you think that is? Because of this. I'm like, well, why do you think that is? And they go back to the thing that they just said. And so it's just, okay, so let's think outside of that. Like, is there anything besides those two that could cause this? So like, even when, like, I personally like to do that with, like, as a form of discipline. Like, one of them hit their younger brother. I'm like, okay, so why don't we hit our brothers? And I was like, because it hurts them. It's like, okay, so why does it hurt them? Like, trying to just like bring them back to like their thought process of why they made the decision. And of course, it's going to be an emotional one. They can't describe that because they don't understand emotions at the same level that we do. But really trying to like get them to think, to ask those, have their mind sharp enough to, like, when they're in the situation next, like, they can be like, did I think this through? Like, or am I going to let my emotions take the better of me? And I'm going to smack my little brother with this toy.
Yeah.
And so there's one, you're building that rational mindset, and now you're starting to get them to ask those questions to themselves. But yeah, you can't like have a kid sit in the chair and be like, think about your life's purpose.
Yeah. Turn and see how that goes working.
But you just take those questions that you would ask yourself in your own personal reflection and just be like, hey, so
yeah,
what you got to play the why dad game with them.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. And then sometimes it's not even questions per se, but it's, so for example, last night, Ellie and I was reading Ellie her bedtime story. Have you ever read the book? I forget the whole title, but it's basically about a jumping mouse. It's like the jumping mouse. And it's a mouse who starts an adventure, meets a magic frog. The magic frog basically turns him into a kangaroo mouse. I really like it, actually. And it's a great, frankly, it's a great book about purpose. So it's like, because this mouse set out to find this far off land that he had heard stories of, and that was his life's purpose. And then he has adventures along the way. But I couldn't read a complete sentence before Evie, for whatever reason, was in the mood to talk incessantly, which is a good thing, because she was making observations, she was expanding the story, she was also asking questions, and my instinct, and I'm sure I did it a couple of times, was, let's just keep reading. Like, but that's such a key moment for her to, like, she's being curious, right? She's observing the world. She's observing how it works, the story, how it works. She's asking questions, herself questions, and maybe her observations are answers to those questions she's asking about the bison that the mouse met. And okay, well, she called him Eyes of Mouse. Why did he call him Eyes of Mouse and not Eyes of Bison? And it took us 2, maybe even 3 times as long to read that book than it should have. I think it was worth it. And I had to keep reminding myself that it was worth it.
Yeah.
Because she's going to foster that level of curiosity and reflection. And those are the moments that we get to do it. Not by, I do try to sit with her in the morning. We have a little routine where we drink a little bit of water to rehydrate. This is a constant struggle right now, so we'll see how long it lasts. But we do a little bit of movement to get the blood flowing. The thing that we're probably most successful at is doing a few breaths. And like, my hope there, this was recommended to me by my coach. My hope there, though, is that she'll like learn this, even if she doesn't build that exact habit, but the benefits of like breathing, and mindfulness, which is tied to real reflection. But anyway, just some other thoughts on that and how we can apply that to the kids in our lives. And that's going to set the stage for identifying those other like building blocks of purpose that we alluded to at the beginning of the episode, which are like, what values do we have as individuals? Like, what are our strengths and talents and skills? Because if we don't take time out of our day, out of our lives
Yeah.
to think about those things and want to know them.
That's super important. And for all your business people out there, it's basically you're doing what's called a SWOT analysis on yourself, identifying your strengths and weaknesses, which are something internal to you, and then your obstacles and your opportunities and threats, which are external forces. And so identifying what are good opportunities, what could threaten you from reaching your purpose, and then using your strengths and weaknesses to take advantage of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard this analogy 2 times this past week, so I think it's worth sharing. There are 3 men, 3 bricklayers. And let's see if I get this right. You ask the first bricklayer what he's doing, and he says, I'm laying bricks. Duh. You ask, or maybe he even said, I'm building a wall. I don't know. You ask the second bricklayer what he's doing. He said, I'm building a building.
Right.
And then you ask the third one, and he said, I'm building a church. You know, and it highlights how you could be doing the same tasks in life. And depending on your level of reflection and like the meaning that you apply to those tasks, it could be as meaningful as I'm just doing one brick at a time, which sometimes has its value. Or it's like, I'm looking at the bigger goal. I'm building a building. Or no, I'm building a cathedral where people are going to commune together and are going to pay homage to a greater power and work to become better versions of themselves. But like the reason why I thought of that story is because like each of the bricklayers, they ended up bricklayers because of their particular like inclinations and strengths and weaknesses. Like if they were inclined to, if they were more studious or, I mean, like more contemplative or whatever, like maybe they would have ended up a professor or maybe they're really good with numbers and they could have ended up an accountant or whatever. So we have to take into account like what we enjoy doing and what we're good at. But the more we think about that and the more we think about how we can apply those things to what matters to us in life, then we can realize, okay, we're not just building a building. We can build a cathedral and it matters. And I think that ties into, I mean, being curious too is like, how do we help our kids identify like their own values? Well, like some of that is going to come from us, like talking as a family, like what's important to us as a family.
Right.
And then that will help them identify it. And then when they challenge certain things, it'd be like, okay, well yeah, why doesn't that matter to you? Or what do you think is more important to you in this? Like allowing them to explore that. Because as individuals, like we are all going to have different things that are important to us.
Right.
And that isn't necessarily better or worse. I might, like you talked about, valuing family. And somebody else might value, like, let's just say.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily better or worse. And they also aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. But in your list of priorities, in your hierarchy of values, one might be higher than the other.
Right.
And that's important to define because that's going to help define what your purpose is.
Exactly.
But yeah, so I think to help our kids identify like what their values are is like, okay, like allow them to ask questions, ask them questions, allow them to pursue their interests.
Yes. What they're good at, what they like, what they may not have the or for natural ability to accomplish certain things. But you're encouraging them to pursue what their mind's setting to.
Yeah, this is all really good stuff.
It is. I feel like it's an episode I've been looking forward to. It's fun. It's deep. Hella deep. But it's probably one of the most important topics we'll cover. Like everything else hinges off of purpose.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about, okay, how do we get started on this, right? And I'm trying to like think back to my own journey of like finding my purpose. And I think for a long time I didn't really believe in that. Or maybe I ignored it because I thought it's like it's a predefined thing. It's like, and well, no, like that. I bought that idea because I wanted control over it.
Right.
And it's like, oh, and then so over the years I realized that I do have control over that. Like I do get to define it. But I think it's hard. It's always hard to get started, right? So I think like it's so easy to get lost in that reflective loop and just like keep thinking and thinking. It's like, no, it's not that. It's not that. It's not that. It's like, well, don't worry about what it's like.
Right.
Just even though that might be part of the process, but put down anything. Just like what most resonates with you. Don't worry about it being right. Just put down something. Like Andrew talked about writing it down. Write down something and say, okay, like this is my purpose. And then if it doesn't resonate or there's something off about it, pull that thread. Why doesn't that sit right? Like, and think about that and then go back and rewrite it.
Right.
And that's part of the process.
Absolutely. If it resonates with you, like there's an element of truth to it that applies to you. And like we said at the beginning, part of it, maybe you're just discovering like steps towards your ultimate purpose, which are absolutely important. Like your goals, you're going to have like those smaller goals, so to say, that are going to bring you towards your ultimate goal. And so maybe you're just identifying those and it's bringing you closer to the capstone.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, I could think about this all day and talk about it all day. But anything else that comes to mind about how we can pursue identifying our purpose, like how we can help those around us, help our kids find theirs?
I think just striving towards ours, being that example through to our kids and our family by living our own a little habit here, authentic towards it. This is what I'm driving forward. This is what I'm going towards. Your kids are going to see an example. Like I said in my case, like maybe it's not going to hit them until they're like 25.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's a really good point. Talking about it, like with your kids, and not in a way like you need to define what your purpose is, but sharing like this is what mine is, and this is how I came to it, and this is how I live it. Because I mean, yeah, like examples is one of the greatest teachers, and you're not like saying, okay, you need to think this way or you need to do that. It's like this has helped me get to where I am in life. And I mean, here's the great thing about like having a purpose is, especially in our Western culture, is like we're very accomplishment oriented, right? It's like, well, having a purpose is going to help you like achieve those accomplishments because you're going to be that much more focused, that much more driven, and that much more productive, right? And especially there have been studies done. I forget the specifics of it, but they had two groups, and they gave one group payment to do it, certain tasks, and then they gave other groups like motives and inspirations, reasons to do the same task. And those who had reasons to do the tasks were more productive and did more, and they worked harder and longer than those who were just paid to do it. And I think that, I mean, if you think about when you think about a time when you did something that you're really proud of and you did really well at it, it's like, why? It's probably because like you had a singular focused goal and you're working towards it consistently. So just think if you had that applied to your entire life, like you're going to be so much more productive. And like, I mean, there's going to be benefits that come with it too, like financial benefits and health benefits and all of that. So I think this is a really exciting topic and really empowering.
Absolutely.
So what did we talk about today? We talked about purpose and like why it's important to define our purpose and how we can do so. And that by identifying and finding a purpose as we go through life, we can crack the code to a meaningful, fulfilling, and accomplished life. So our challenge this week, I guess this is a good time as any to wrap it up, but our challenge this week is to take some time to ask the question, why? You know, why am I doing this? Whatever it may be. And bonus points if you keep asking why until there's no more whys to ask.
Extra bonus points if you write it down, put it in your wallet.
Yes. Yeah. Because what's the point? Like if you go through this exercise and then you just put it in the corner and forget about it, you're just going to end up on the hamster wheel all over again. So you got to keep coming back to it and find a system that works for you. For me, I have a small little note card that as part of my morning routine, it's one of the first things I do. I read through it and I say it aloud. Doesn't mean you have to do it that way, but just find a way that you'll keep coming back to it. So yeah, actually, I'm going to steal that as my tool of the week. And I mean, since you kind of alluded to it, well, it can be yours as well, but whatever. But yeah, like, my bear literally stole it from me.
It's a good one. Let's just stick to one.
Yeah. Write it down. Yeah, put it somewhere where you're going to look at it every day. Done. Anything else, Andrew, before we wrap up here?
No, I'm just like in a really contemplative spot right now because I got so many thoughts going through my head. I could keep this conversation going for like an hour and a half.
Yeah, but we'll do y'all a favor and end it here. Doesn't mean we won't, but yeah, no, that's awesome, dude. Had so much fun talking about this and thinking about it. And the final thing I'll say is the more we do this, the more like what's the word? I just read it. But basically it's our brain, like it automatically goes into reflective mode.
Yeah.
And it's like half of our life is spent, our brain is just in this kind of like default reflective mode. I forget what it's called. But the more we do this purposeful reflection, the more your default mode is going to resort to that. And you'll find yourself just like,
Interesting.
And I don't know if that's actually the default mode is scientific. I don't know if your brain actually doing that, like being more inclined to do that, is scientific, but I believe it is. I'll have to see if I
Wouldn't doubt it.
can find evidence on it. But anecdotally, I found that to be true for myself. So you'll find, and so it'll become a habit. It'll a way of life where you're reflective and that reinforces your own purpose, your own way of doing things. So it might be hard at first, but I highly encourage you to do that. Anyway, thank you all for joining in and listening to our conversation today and about finding our purpose in life. And we strongly encourage you to continue this topic with self-reflection. And if it fits into your goals, find a way to apply that and help you to be better man, husband, father that you want to be.
Amen.
So from us at Why Dad, continue to like and subscribe and follow our social platforms. Share us with your friends and families. And we appreciate all the feedback and questions that you bring to us.
We really do. It's really important for us to know like what's working for you, what's hitting home, so that way we can deliver more meaningful content.
And we also don't want to be in our own little like silos with our blinders on. Like I'm a firm believer of even if I balk at it sometimes, being kind of pulled out of my way of thinking because it's so easy just to get like lost in what I think is right, and it's not always the case. So anyway, I digress.
So that's Paul's long way of saying we do appreciate.
They did that. Thanks, everyone. All right, thanks, everyone. Till next time.
All righty. Thank you, Paul. Thank you all.
Bye.